This is not going public, is it?
Welcome to La Casita Martinez, where we indulge in the art of deep conversation and vulnerability in pursuit of self-love, self-expression, and self-value. I am your host, Samantha Martinez. Hello.
Hi. Welcome back.
We didn't record on Friday because this week I felt it was crazy. Oli was sick. I got sick. You started a new project.
Yeah. That was my week. It went from being very calm to being very chaotic.
Yeah. So, but Tuesdays is going to be our recording day.
Yeah.
So it comes out on Friday.
Yeah.
So we didn't record, but we have a topic that we've been talking about. I feel like we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
But then it came up last weekend because of not Super Bowl. What is it called?
The Super Bowl. Yeah.
I know, but the game that happened last Sunday.
One of the conference championships. I don't know which one it was.
Right. So
the one that Taylor Swift
was in Baltimore, and our town went crazy, even though it's an hour away from Baltimore, and Taylor Swift was not coming over here. But, everyone was freaking out. So we actually watched the game, the only game we watched of the season, because of Taylor Swift. And so then we started talking about her relationship with Travis.
Yeah, Travis Kelce.
And gender roles.
Yeah.
Right? And that's like one of our favorite topics.
Yeah, it's a never-ending topic around here.
To discuss.
Yeah. But what was it like specifically that...
So we were on a date. You and I went out to dinner. And I was like, I wonder who pays for dinner when Taylor Swift and Travis go out to eat, because she's a billionaire.
The most famous person in the world.
She makes more money than him.
Sure.
So I guess on paper she would have to pay. But as a woman who's being courted, I'm sure she would want him to pay. But then it doesn't matter to them because of money.
And my argument was it doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't think it's even a conversation. Like for folks in their kind of stratosphere, they just go to dinner. They don't. That was my thought. I'm like, I don't think the two of them specifically care, but it led us to a whole conversation about gender roles.
Right.
The ongoing conversation about
that we have
about gender roles. Yeah.
We had it this morning in bed again.
Yeah.
And it's something I struggle with. Like I really do struggle with.
Yeah. It's like an unresolved thing.
Yeah. Trying to figure out why. So I'm going to ask our therapist.
Yeah.
Which we got off the waiting list, so we're starting soon.
We're next in line.
Which is exciting.
Yeah. But I think the gender role thing, I think is I mean, everyone, and we said this morning, like I genuinely believe everyone has their own kind of answer to this. Every couple, every, set of partners, every individual has their own kind of equilibrium around what the gender roles are in a relationship, or what they should be for them. Whatever works for you, works for you. But I think for me, at least, it's been an interesting kind of like arc, because I come from this like extremely traditional male, female, kind of a informed background, right? This kind of Christian informed family structure that I was brought up in and taught to,
as was I.
Yeah. And like we were taught that that's the way of the world. Like that's how, or not the way of the world. That's God's design. Right. And then we grow up and we, become adults that interact in a world full of folks who don't necessarily live that way. And I fully respect it. Right. So we went through our own season of like, hey, you have a career, you got an education, you want to, develop a career and have more responsibility and not be at the bottom of the totem pole, but rather be closer to the top sort of thing. We went through that whole arc, and now we're back, like we said last episode, we're back at this different place where our lives aren't necessarily about that anymore.
Yeah.
But then what is,
And then we have two daughters who we're like, how do we, we know how we're raising them, but then what happens when they leave our house and find a partner?
Yeah.
And how they identify. So I also grew up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom she became a stay-at-home mom when I was 7. So when my brother was born, my dad worked, went to school, provided for us, and she was at home with us. Like she was the main caretaker.
Yeah.
So I grew up like that, but then I was also raised to be like, no, you're going to college so you can have a career, take care of yourself, like, you're going to be educated so you can have a career. So we did that. But then when I moved to New York, I had just graduated 2 weeks out of college. I had graduated, so I wasn't working. So you were providing, which, okay, funny story. You were providing even before, like when I was when I was student teaching nowadays, which is crazy. I heard that you have to pay for student teaching, but whatever. You weren't working. You weren't getting paid to work for student teaching, right? I didn't have an income when I was doing my student teaching. And I remember clearly you were like, so I'll pay for your phone bill. Like we talked to each other mostly.
Oh, we were dating. You're saying
dating.
we were still dating. Yeah.
But I was student teaching, and I remember because I've worked since I was in high school. Like I've always had a job, different jobs here and there. So I always was able to pay. I had my own apartment a few years. Like I was able to cover my bills. Yeah. But I remember when I was student teaching, I had to move back home because I didn't have an income, and we started dating, and you said, I'll cover your phone bill. I'm going to do it anyways because we were engaged already. Yeah. So you're like, I'm going to do it anyways. So why not do it? And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So that was like the first taste of that. And then I moved to New York. I wasn't working for the first like couple years.
Yeah.
What?
No. And I was going to say, I think it's worth noting that before we got engaged, like those conversations that led toward engagement and marriage, one of them, I vividly remember saying to you, listen, like, if you will have a career, seems like you want to be a teacher. That's all well and good. I believe it's my responsibility to provide for you. Like, I don't want you to feel like you have to provide equally in our home or whatnot. And I said that before we were engaged to you because again, that's how I was brought up. And that's how I felt about that issue at 23 years old. Right. So we stepped into marriage, with that in mind. Whereas, in talking about how this is different for everyone. And, we know, I think an overwhelming majority of our friends and family don't see it that way. Right. Yeah. But it's just, I think it's interesting background that in our case, that's kind of how that was the kind of social contract between us before we committed to each other, for life sort of thing.
So you shot yourself in the foot, did ya?
No, it's interesting because I to this day, it's this interesting topic to think about because I continue to feel, and again, I think it's just that like young kind of inculcation that I guess I got, or education, whatever you want to call it. I fundamentally believe that it's my responsibility to provide for my family. It's not, hey, you show up and we're equal. You bring a paycheck and we'll split it 50-50 and it's not a transaction. I don't believe the economics of a marriage are a transaction. I feel if I chose, nobody put a gun to my head to get married. First of all, I chose to marry. I chose to marry you, and I was brought up to believe that, or feel a sense of responsibility to provide. And that's kind of to this day. Like there have been times in our marriage where we made the exact same, down to the penny, exact same amount of income, but that didn't change my responsibility. I was just like, wow, this is cool. Like she makes income as, and we make the same income. That's all cool, but it doesn't mean we're both like, oh, now we're somehow the responsibilities have changed. And I don't know, call me, I guess, antiquated or traditional or whatever it is, but I continue to feel that, and now that we have daughters, to your point, I feel it's my responsibility to provide for them as long as they choose to be under our roof. We talked about that this morning. It's like, who knows if or how and at what time they'll choose to kind of fly off on their own. I don't want them to have to feel like they had to make that choice, or like they had no choice but to go fend for themselves. It's like, no, you have a mom and a dad, but specifically in this case, a dad whose responsibility it is to provide for you. So.
Yeah. So the reason why I struggle, I mean, it's funny because I feel like people will be like, so what's your struggle, girl? Like, just don't work. But I had my career. I loved my career. I ascended in my career, and I, was able to buy myself things. And the way that like our finances, again, we're going to be authentic, right? The way our finances work is you do provide for us. You feel responsible to take care of all of our needs. Mm-hmm. So my wants, which
you can fund those yourself.
Yeah. Which everyone, I mean, it's no secret. I like nice things. I fund them, and even on top of that, you buy me things often, but things that I want for myself, I buy. And so there was a point in our marriage where I was like, this is amazing because my money was for me, for things that I wanted, right? And that's, I feel like where I felt great. Like I can provide for myself the things that I want, and then you covered like the family needs, right?
Yeah. I can see how that is appealing.
Okay, whatever. So then I left my job. I was no longer working. And I felt urgency and I felt compelled to be like, no, I have to. What do you mean I can't? I'm not bringing anything to the table, right? But at the same time, I'm like, I'm sorry. I birthed these kids. I'm taking care of the kids. We share the work at home. I have a period. I'm going to have menopause. Like, it's hard being a woman. So at the same time, I'm like, wait, my husband can provide for me and it's okay. But it's a struggle, a mental struggle in my head. Like, okay, what am I providing? How am I adding to our generational wealth? Or like my provision to that is not monetary.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think the thing that and it's a dynamic. It's a very real and fluid dynamic. I think in every single household, no matter what. There's economic value, like you're saying, like the ability to provide for the things you need, warmth and clothing and roof and food over the table. And then the wants, that go after that. And then the things that are non-economic, right? Like, but actually do translate, in one way or another into dollars and cents also. But it's the attention that and the care with which you're able to care for our kids, right? That has, forget the dollars and cents. Don't monetize that for a second, even though you could very easily do that. But like that has immeasurable value, I think. And it's hard to see it. You can't see it from one day to the next or 1 week to the next. But I constantly like stop myself and remind myself, my God, like we're foregoing higher incomes right now for the sake of you being able to spend 100% of your energy and attention on the girls first, or not 100%, but like as much as you want to overweight that. And you don't have to worry about other stuff. I think that choice, because it is a choice, that choice is going to is going to be so rewarding for our girls and for us over the long term. And I'm not talking about dollars and cents, right? I'm talking about the kind of the chemistry and the glue that kind of holds our family together is a function of how much time and energy you're able to pour into all of us, right? All of us together. So it is crazy. To your point about like what value do you bring?
Right.
It's really hard, I think, for a woman sometimes because so much of that value isn't quantifiable in the way that a salary is, right?
Yeah. But it's also like we get fed to be girl bosses, right?
Yeah.
Like you can do both. But you can't. Like, and I remember saying that we had that conversation in our apartment in the Bronx when Oli was born and I was a teacher. And I was like, something's going to give. Either I'm going to be an excellent teacher or I'm going to be an excellent mom.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was an excellent teacher because I decided to where I wasn't going to go to work and like do it half-ass it, and then I was tired when I got home. Yeah. Right. And not to say I wasn't an excellent mom, but I just couldn't physically give 100% when I got home.
Yeah.
And so it's tough because it's like we don't want to raise our girls to be like, you need a man, you need a man's, you need his money, or you need a man to buy you this or do that or take you on trips. Like do that for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And so then we also talked about energy with it, which I think is so interesting, the masculine energy and the feminine energy, and how we are allowed to be in our complete feminine energy due to our partner being completely in his masculine energy, right? So I feel like I can be very feminine and give wholeheartedly like what a woman can give because of the energy that you give. But that's not always a given. That's not true in all relationships, right? We're like, or even like we said that, like we are very blessed that I have the choice to not work, right? Because if I had to work, it's like, well, I'm in my feminine, you're in your masculine, but we need to put food on the table, so you need to work, and that's I completely understand that for women and moms who's like, I have to work, I'm stressed about work, plus I have to be the best mom, plus I have all the house chores and I have to make dinner, it's just so much on our plate. And that's what makes you think like it shouldn't be that way. Women shouldn't have to worry about all that. So if I don't have to.
Yeah, but what do you, I know we've talked about it, but I think, what do you mean when you say a woman in their masculine energy versus their feminine energy?
That they have to fend for themselves, that they don't have someone to take care of them, to value them, right? And not necessarily take care of them financially, but like allow them to be vulnerable and authentic and feel safe. I think it's a safety.
Yeah, interesting.
Right? Like I feel safe with, and I think about that with with the girls, with you, or with me and my dad. Like if my dad's around, I'm like, he's got me. Like I feel safe.
It's interesting because of course I can only kind of hear and appreciate, try to appreciate, what you're describing, because I'm not a woman and I don't feel that. I don't feel any feminine energy for me personally. I don't feel any, to use that same kind of framework. I feel it's my responsibility to provide the safety. I don't walk around looking for safety, which is, I think, a fundamental difference. Perhaps I could be wrong, but between what you're describing as feminine energy and masculine energy, I don't also feel, I'm not like a type A, like a pack leader sort of. I don't need to protect everybody in the world. I just simply, I know that I need to create safety for you and my daughters. But I don't feel like somebody has to create safety for me, right? That's just, I think that's kind of where, I just have like one singular kind of view. But it's interesting to hear, and in our conversations, it's been interesting to think about that some women may not have a choice or may not feel like they have a choice, but to step into that same role. Well, I got to create safety
for themselves.
I have to create safety for myself, period.
Like no one's gonna come and help me.
Yeah. And that's when I think about my daughters, I'm like, man, okay, I'm here to provide safety for them indefinitely. Like if they never get married, it continues to be my, responsibility. They're my responsibility until I die, But also I think part of the beauty in the notion that they might find a partner someday who might take on that role, from me, is me as a dad being like, okay, like she has someone to make her feel safe, right? And we're not talking about, finances here.
Yeah,
we're talking about that aspect of, safety.
Or enabling, like we have to teach them how to change a tire. We have to teach them how to change the oil, right?
Yeah.
So if they have to do it, then they know how to. Yeah. But we would hope that they find a partner that, that can take care of them and make them feel safe to say like, okay, well, if I have a flat tire, I'm stuck, right? So like, what do I do about that? Yeah. Where for me, I'm like, okay, I'm calling your dad, right? Like I don't know how to change a tire. Like I'm stuck on the side of the road, I'll call him first. Like come help. I've done that before.
And this is because he has a truck with stuff on it, not because I can't change a tire.
Oh yeah. No, of course. But when that happened to me, I was like, I called him. Yeah. So that's different, right? Where I do think my dad, continue to feel very safe with him. Where when I'm with him still right now, I'm like, Bah, can you, I depend on him a lot. Yeah. So it's hard because you have to be able to, you're walking a tightrope, like taking care of them making them feel safe, but also teaching them to do things on their own. Yeah. So it's like,
and ultimately then, like we have 2 daughters and both of them they seem to be quite different. And at the end of once all is said and done, we can prepare and we can try to provide them an example or even guide them or whatever. But at the end of the day, we have to respect the choices that they will make as young adults. You know, they may choose to go off and they have some, you know, passion, ambition that has nothing to do with us. And they're going to go off and pursue it alone, perhaps. Perfectly fine. You know, I'm not going to get in the way of that. Right. And also, especially because like I said, I'm not a woman. I don't know what having to hold those 2 things feels like, or even making that choice. So I wouldn't get in the way of that. But at the same time, I want them, going back to an earlier point, I don't want them to feel like, well, I had no choice but to go out into the world all by myself and fend for myself. It's like, no, you do have a choice. We're here. Like your dad is here to take care of you and provide safety, right? For as long as you need it, forever if you need it, right? And then allow them the space to make their choices around that. You know, I hope at least that's where I'm at with it right now. You know what I mean? It's not one camp or the other. Like, you know, go out and be a girl boss or be some domestic, you know, queen. Either one is fine. I just want you to have the choice.
Well, I think the shift was when I became a mom, because I was very capable. I am very capable of like having a career, you know, being financially independent, doing all of that. I have my education, I have the experience, but it's when you become a mom that I think that energy rises to the top and you're like, okay, what's more important? And can you do both? Should you have to do both?
And it's something that you literally couldn't like feel prior to motherhood, right? You could have all the feelings or the thoughts you had or anyone might have about it, but that I think you're right that in particular probably for women who are faced with these challenges or these choices probably does alter the way you think about that particular issue, right? Because I've watched it, you know, I've watched motherhood transform you, right? And I, if I had to guess, like I always presumed that you would be that kind of person who just owns the role of motherhood and like revels in it. And I know everyone is different around that. But yeah, I've watched motherhood become absolutely the most important role that you play. And what better thing than to have the opportunity to actually lean into that rather than having to be like, nope, I have some bigger ambition or some bigger thing I want to accomplish, but to each his own.
But I think it's so important to have these conversations before you get married.
For sure.
Because then the finances come into play too, right? Because we have a lot of friends who separate their finances. Like this is my check, this is your check. We both give for rent or for groceries or whatever. And that works for them and that's fine. But that's just so important to talk about before you get married. Like how are we going to work around this? Because you can love someone unconditionally, but it's going to come up. It's an issue that's going to bring tension for sure. So just being able to breach the topic, as much as you can resolve it before you step into marriage. Yeah.
And I think, like we said earlier, we talked about this, what we saw as our responsibilities. Clearly it was appealing to you. Like I didn't, you know, when we were even engaged, you didn't say to me like, no, wait a minute. No, I'm going to provide for myself. You're going to, you know, we're going to split everything 50-50. So that was an indicator, I think, to each of us, like you liked what you heard and you accepted what you heard from me. So I was like, oh, okay, this is the type of, you know, person who's aligned with the way that I see the world, right? And I think also, to your point, right, as folks that aren't married yet, they could have the totally different flavor of that conversation as long as they agree, you know, and they're on the same page. Then that's the important point, right? Is to discuss that ahead of time rather than to come to find out later that you disagreed on something so fundamental.
But also to understand that it's evolves, right? Because at that time, I was a teacher going into teaching, a new teacher. So I knew, and you were in a high paying job. Like obviously you were going to make more than me. for a while, right? And now neither of us are in those professions, so
things change.
Things change.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you have to, talk about the now, think about the future, but understand that things are going to change.
Yeah.
So Taylor Swift does not pay for dinner, maybe. I don't know. What is that? So I have like friends, one of my closest friends, and if she hears this, she's gonna know who she is, says that on the first date, the guy pays.
Yeah.
But the second date that she like vowed to herself that she would be the one to pay. Because, she's like, I make money. I have a job. Like I'll allow them just for like tradition. The guy will pay on the first date. And if we go on a second date, she will pay.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so it just, depends. Like, do you split it on the first day? What does that look like? I mean, that's been years that we've gone on dates, but I'm curious let us know.
Yeah.
What the norm is, or is that a conversation? Do you have that conversation before, like the bill comes?
Right.
Okay, I got it.
I saw something recently where it was like a woman saying like, hey, life hack, if you like don't like the guy or something. I think I may be misremembering. Basically, if you're on a date and the guy the guy doesn't offer to pay the bill and is like, yeah, we're going to split it, then that's your opportunity to be like, I'm so sorry. I thought this was a date. Kind of suggesting that like, if you thought this was a date, then I expected
but he's
you
like,
to pay.
I'm so sorry. I thought you were a feminist.
Yeah. I think we're so far removed from whatever dating looks like these days.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious to know.
Yeah.
What all that shakes out
what the
as.
norms are.
But I was like, as a girl, I'm like, that's an incredible life hack. I'd be like, I'm sorry, I thought this was a date. When the guy's like, yeah, we're gonna split
it.
Interesting.
I don't know. Yeah, and and what if you do? Like, more people are getting married later in life. So then what if you come into a relationship and you have your own, you're a CEO of your company, you have a high paying job as a woman, right? And it's like, or you make more than your partner, right? I also saw a TikTok the other day where a girl was like, I am dating a broke man and he's amazing and has the best personality, but he doesn't have money.
Yeah. Oh, that's a whole.
I know.
We have that conversation as parents nowadays.
So like, how so do you take on the role as a provider?
Yeah.
Then that just changes all the energy.
Yeah. I guess what this tells me is we're sharing very much our very personal experience,
Yeah.
It's interesting just the kind of wide spectrum of experiences out there. And that's, that's cool. It's like, it's nice to know you live in a world where everyone kind of interprets these things totally differently, but we thought it was important to kind of share our, kind of position on
ongoing views. Like, I'm not dead set on like, this is what I think. And
because
I
also
believe.
Think about that. What you just, the TikTok you just shared about. Let's say that, or let's imagine a scenario in which overnight or in a couple of months, you nail some product market fit, service or product that suddenly makes you extremely in demand and suddenly economically the larger provider in our home sort of thing. That brings that whole conversation right to the doorstep, right? It's like, now I'm the larger provider. How do I feel about the exact same things I felt or the exact same things that were still the same dynamic 5 years ago? What does that make me feel? Is it still my responsibility to provide for the home, even though you make 10 times more than me? Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. These are super interesting things, right? That, we don't really consider unless they happen to us.
Unless they happen. Yeah.
To be continued.
So take me on a date.
Yeah, it's your birthday month.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So I like that topic. And I think it's just organic. So as we go on, every episode is just going to be something that probably comes up throughout the week that sparks our interest. And
this week it was Taylor Swift.
Yep.
I'm excited for the Super Bowl now.
Yeah.
It's her against Olivia Culpo, right?
Who we met.
We did.
In person.
Yeah.
She's beautiful. Okay.
Cool.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. See you next week.
Bye.